Hello there. My name is Jeremy Lesky, and before I get started, I want to thank Jim for giving me the opportunity to do this. Jim, when you asked me to do this, it was at a time where I was really struggling with who I am. I've been going through a lot lately. I'm starting my new company, Gimme Giveaway. Yes, I know, Jim. I just gave a plug in on this, but that's the cost. But I was, like I said, I was really struggling with some things, and so. As a business owner, a lot of business owners and a lot of people just in life, when we go through those days, we get up and we're wondering if we can achieve what we're doing, if we're trying to tackle things that are too big for us. We have self doubt about one thing or another in life and what we're capable of doing. And honestly, I had to sit down and start thinking about things before doing this testimonial video and really go back over the things that I have accomplished in life and the obstacles that I have overcome to be where I am today and be the man I am today. And that's really helped me right now push forward through some trying times. So, again, Jim, thank you for this opportunity. I really, really do appreciate this. Jim knows that I used to go and do public speaking. I stopped speaking and giving my testimony a few years ago, and I'll tell you about that as I give this testimony. So we're going to go ahead. I'll just delve right into this and get started with things. So, as a kid, I was an awkward kid, and I got picked on a lot in school. And we're going to say this nicely. When I came home, I was picked on at home from my dad. I do love my dad. He provided for me. He gave me a roof over my head. Anything that I really needed in life, my father did. The unfortunate thing is he just had a temper problem, and he didn't know how to deal with his temper problem, and he didn't deal with it properly. So we're just going to kind of move on from that chapter there. But at 12 years old, I had taken my father's van out. I had a police chase, and wrecked that. That was kind of the beginning of my career. Found myself getting into drugs and alcohol to try and cope with things in life. I was a cutter. I've got some light scars, and I don't know if that'll show up on there, that I cut myself, and I've got burn marks on my body here and there. Was doing that to myself. Um, I was getting into a lot of fights. I was a very angry kid. At 16, I overdosed on some medication. Found myself in a hospital, them shoving tubes down my throat, getting my stomach pumped. Um, it was just a very tough time in my life. 18, I dropped out of high school. I was living out of my car. Um, 19, I was the getaway driver in a robbery that went wrong. The people that were doing the robbery ended up shooting and killing two people. And then I found myself going to jail. Um, so it was in jail at that time that I was trying to get out of a dorm. They put me in this 21 and under dorm, and there wasn't a lot of room, and a whole bunch of idiots, basically, including myself, they were in there, and it was constant fighting. I hardly slept. It was just, it was terrible. So I did anything I could to get out of that dorm area. So I went to chapel. When I went to chapel, there was a guy that sounded like James Earl Jones. He had this big, deep voice, and he just captivated you. And he was walking up and down the aisles, and he was just, looking right at each one of us. And it was just like, man, I don't remember what he said, but I know it just impacted me. So I went back to the dorm, and I had this little Bible, and that's a great mission, by the way. Please support that for little Bibles in jail, in prison. It's definitely needed. Anyway, in this Bible, I pick it up and I start reading, and immediately I'm in Psalms, and it's talking, or Proverbs, forgive me, and it was talking about, friends that will lay a trap, or people that'll lay a trap, and they'll say, the riches we have, come and we'll get all this money and do these things, and it's a trap, and even the birds in the sky know better than this. So, it spoke to me immediately on the situation I was in. So I started getting into the Bible more and more. And really, I was doing that because I was looking for God to let me out of prison. It came to the part where it says, if you have faith the size of the mustard seed, you'll tell this mountain to get up and move, it'll get up and move. So I'm literally sitting here thinking, okay, if I have belief in God and I pray and I fast and I do these things, and I'm truly apologetic for what I did, God is just going to find a way to miraculously release me. My lawyer comes to me, originally tells me I'm looking at 3 years in prison. That was a hard thing for me to swallow, so I'm praying more and more. Then the lawyer comes back later and says, you're looking at 6 years in prison. Whoa, what happened to the 3? And then when it came time for me to get sentenced, the judge sentenced me to 10 years in prison. Completely caught me off guard. At that time, again, I thought I had a relationship with God, but I didn't really have a full relationship. And I threw that Bible down and I was saying, this is a bunch of garbage. But the problem is once you start letting God into your heart and you start opening up, well, then God just keeps continuing to work in your heart. So I went to prison, and a lot of things, I went through a lot in prison. Became a hard-hearted person for a while because I was in survival mode, and I used to hurt people and do things that I'm not proud of because I was trying to survive and whatnot. So, but when I was in prison, I went and got my GED. I went to college for business, and God started opening my heart more and more. It was about my 7th year into prison. And I was sitting there. I was just sitting there, and there was nothing on television. And so I flip, and I'm watching this. What is it? Trinity Broadcasting Network. It'd been some time since I've seen it, so I hope that's what it was. Anyway, they had a movie on, and I'm going, okay, at least it's something to watch. And it was the story of Saul, who became Paul, one of the big pillars in the church. And when I saw his life story and the things that he'd gone through and the transformation that he had gone through, he called himself the worst sinner. And it just hit home with me that if there was hope for this person, there was hope for me. And if God used somebody like him, why couldn't God use somebody like me? And before that, even though I'd read the Bible, I had envisioned these people, these apostles, as these holy rollers that had it all together. And, come to find out, the more I really got into the Bible, the more I found they were just regular screw-ups like the rest of us. I look at, I don't want to go too far into it, but Peter, I still imagine that he is this is a rough, gruff sailor right here. He is very rough around the edges. I mean, when they came to apprehend Jesus, he didn't even hesitate. He pulled this knife out, took somebody's ear off. I mean, that's how gruff he was. And I could just imagine that he was sitting there with Jesus, and he'd tell this joke that was a crude joke, and then all of a sudden realize what he said and look up Jesus and get him going, oh, I'm sorry, Jesus, I didn't. And Jesus being like, I love you for who you are. And I imagine that's not in the Bible anywhere, but I'm just kind of piecing that together. But so I got out of prison after did 10 years, 9 years, 11 months. I got a month off for good behavior. All I could do was bounce in bars. But there was a little church that took me in, and it was a great little church. And there were some troubled teens that were in there, and some teens that were going through different things. And they came to me and started asking me questions. And so I started telling them from some of the experiences in my life, why not to do some of the things they were doing, such and such. And like I said, I was working in a bar, and I was bouncing at nights, and then all of a sudden I found myself getting home about 3, 4 a.m. in the morning, half drunk because they gave me free shots. Next thing you know, I'm going to church in the morning talking to these teens at 7 a.m. So I would get just a little sleep, but something about them. So next thing you know, I had one church after the other start asking me to come visit their church, talking to their teens, giving my story. About this time, I was running through a lot of struggles. My electricity was about to get turned off, and I wasn't making very good money bouncing in these bars. And so the bad thing about prison is it can take a criminal and turn them into a super criminal, because you are surrounded by other criminals that have connections. They have drug dealers, they have all this other stuff, blah, blah, blah. You name it, you can find that in there. The whole shady underbelly, these people are connected with, and you can get all these connections. So I had this little book that had names of all these people. And I had this thing where I could set up and run and do things. I had buyers, I had runners, I had all this other stuff that I could do, and I could make quick money. So I'm sitting there with this book. Electricity's about to get turned off. Forgive, I got a dog that snores, so every now and then you'll hear a snoring noise. But my electricity's off, and I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to get my next meal. I've got this book. Don't know where I'm going to go in life. And so I'm sitting here contemplating this. And then I started thinking about all those kids I'd been talking to. What would happen if they found out that I was doing these things? Everything I told them would have been a lie. It was really at that point in life that I truly went undergo. We have these different points in our life that changes, but that really changed me. At that point, I really started thinking about others instead of myself. Sorry about that. And so I ended up throwing that book away. And I hadn't looked back, and that was the end of that kind of thinking for me. And I truly started living my life from that point for other people. Started this limousine company, was building that up. It was an opportunity, found a couple old limos, got into that, and then one thing or another was building this up. A good friend of the family helped me get a loan to get things started, and was really a blessing at that point. Trying to start this company up, and I had built this thing up in the fleet, and I was struggling real hard, but I'm going and speaking all over at the same time. I believe that God's in this, whatnot. Long story short, I lost everything. The company went under. I fought with everything that I had trying to keep that company. It destroyed me losing the company. But what I hadn't realized is how much the company had destroyed me running the company. While I was running that company, even though I was giving back to the community and I was doing all these other things, I went from 240 pounds to 320 pounds, and I was so stressed. I was a slave to my company. The phone was attached to my ear 24/7. I'd go camping. I'd be sitting there on the phone. I'd go out with friends. I'd be sitting there on the phone. I couldn't enjoy a movie if I had a limousine out. One thing or another. Anyway, that company had ruled me and owned me. So after I lost the company, I did what I call my Forrest Gump phase. I had some friends and I had made this cross. It was made out of PVC, and then we used wood grain duct tape. It looked so real. And I decided, and I trained for this, and I carried this cross the length of Illinois. I started from Rockford, Illinois, and walked down to Bald Knob Cross in southern Illinois. And then after that, I ended up going to New York, walking through New York with another group with their cross. And, I was having a hard time keeping up with them, and I couldn't figure out why. I didn't know what was going on. And I was just having more and more issues. And I went on the way back, did some through Ohio, and came back. And it was shortly after that I was having some issues. I went to a hospital and found out that I had over 90% blockage in my coronary artery the whole time. I had five stents put in, and I had a small stroke while I was in the hospital. So again, now shortly after that, and I'm coming down on time here, and I'm trying to wrap this up quickly. I can make more. If people want to get a hold of me, feel free to contact me on Facebook, Jeremy Leisky, Jeremy Leisky. You can go on there and check it out, and I can talk to you more about it. But anyway, shortly after that, I had lost everything I had. I had a friend of mine that was staying with me, and I was afraid of losing everything, so I put things under his name. He unfortunately had taken everything. I had truly lost everything and was on the streets. Had a friend that took me in, and thank God for him, and I started getting on my feet, building up. And then I got a phone call that my mother had passed. I moved out to Arizona to take care of my father, who was in really bad shape. And my father passed less than a year after my mother. And so, during the last 6 months of my father's life, he kept talking about things he wished he would have done, opportunities that he missed. And so I decided to start my dream company. And this is actually a company of passion that I started because I wanted to help other small businesses that was struggling with some real marketing. That's what I ran into with my company. And so I've gone through a whole gambit in the last 2 years building this company up, and it has tested me a lot and helped me push through. But here I am with my company and trying to move forward, trying to keep myself from losing my home and lose everything because I believe so wholeheartedly in what I'm doing. And I have something spectacular. It's just getting to the point when things go. But um, I've been really questioning a lot with faith lately, not just because of hard times, it's just questioning myself on, am I following God's plan or am I following something else? And so, I've been soul searching on that. And then God really broke me down the last about 2 weeks ago. And I found myself just plastered on the floor, face down, just broken in God's presence. And then it was shortly after that Jim had hit me up asking me to give this testimony. And again, Jim, thank you again for the honor of giving this testimony for people. And, there's a lot in between. Again, I could share, and there's so many different steps, so many different things, but especially during the crosswalk, I could do testimony after testimony about that and different steps. But that's kind of it, the long short of where I'm at right now. I'm just like most people out there, day by day, trying to move forward, trying to stay in God's grace and God's presence, and trying to do what I can for God. And there's a lot of days where I'm sitting there and I'm picking up and running with it on my own. And then I have to stop myself and remind myself, hey, I'm supposed to be giving it to God. And, I know that a lot of us do that in life. But, again, if this has touched you, please reach out to me. I can talk with you a little bit more. Again, my name is Jeremy Lesky. And all I can say right now is take care. God bless. And I want you to understand something. You are not alone in this world on how you are feeling. If you're going through something right now, if you've got addictions, if you've got other things that you're dealing with, don't be ashamed about that. Come forward, talk to people about that. It's the only way you get some help. If you have addiction to pornography, different things like that, if you have a drinking problem, drug problem, any of that, talk to people about it. They want to help you out, and you'll be surprised about how many people have gone through those same things in life. So take care. God bless. And again, thank you for taking the time to listen to me.